him and everybody around him. I don't have to be nice. Number one, I agree with Quentin Tarantino. George Clooney is not a actor. I don't know what he is. He's a brand. And by the way, and God bless him. You know what? He supposedly treats his friends really well. You know what I mean? Buys them things. And he's got a really great place in Lake Como. And he's great friends with Barack Obama. You, what do you have to do with anything? Why do I have to listen to you? What right do you have to step on a man who's given 52 years of his life to the service of this country and decide that you, George Clooney, are going to take out basically a full-page ad in the New York Times to me and James Carville, who hasn't run a race in 40 years, and David Axelrod, who had one success in his political life, and that was Barack Obama. And that was because of Barack Obama, not because of David Axelrod. And David Plouffe, and all of these guys, and the Pod Save America guys, who were junior speechwriters in, on Barack Obama's Senate staff, who have been dining out on the relationship with him for years, making millions of dollars. The Anita.
Is this it? Is this the liberal Joe Rogan? Dude, he is so defensive about his father, man. He is so goddamn defensive about his father. It is crazy. Dropping facts? Well, no, he's not dropping facts. Hunter Biden said the reason we lost in 2024 is because the Democratic Party was not sufficiently loyal to Joe Biden. The crazy thing is, and like normally I think there are broader systematic forces at work here, you know, but I think in this case, honestly, it's just Joe and Hunter Biden really love each other. We have every reason to believe that. I don't think it's any sinister wheeling and dealing on the back end. I think it's just Joe and Hunter have a very tight-knit father-son relationship, and as a consequence, it tears Hunter up to see people oust Joe Biden, no matter how justified it is.
Of the world who's made $40-50 million off the Democratic Party. They're all going to insert their judgment over a man who has figured out, unlike anybody else, how to get elected to the United States Senate over 7 times, how to pass more legislation than any president in history, how to have a better midterm election than anybody in history, and how to garner more votes than any president that has ever run. And they're going to replace their judgment for his.
Not to mention...
Who's Jake Tapper's audience? Jake Tapper...
My mom or something? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. For real, though. I don't even think it's your mom anymore.
No.
By the numbers, what influence does Jake Tapper have over anything? He has the smallest audience on cable news. And beyond that, I think that the book is right now on Amazon that he put out. I mean, his ratings just went to shit after he put the book out.
Doesn't Hunter Biden for the I feel like when Hunter Biden has expressed political opinions apart from ones related to Joe Biden, for the most part, he's more sensible. He's just like so loyal to Joe that it overwhelms any other political instinct that he has.
You know, they did a 2-week infomercial for it. I mean, it was such a money grab, such a disservice to everybody that he serves with.
That is true. It was a disgusting money grab. That is 100% true.
George Clooney's, came out with his, maybe it was a little before that, with his op-ed, and then you had all the money people, and then you had a whole host of other people that had, I guess that, Truman saying it could be applied to Joe Biden more than anybody else. If you want a friend in Washington, get a dog.
Why is George Clooney always saying shit? I thought he was just acting in Ocean's 11 and stuff like that.
Is there any pushback in this interview? Like, are there any opinions expressed by Callahan, or is it all pretty much just yes-anding?
Seriously been saying shit.
Yeah. Here's what he said. He said that the president needed to be introduced to him at a fundraiser that he was ostensibly the host of. There was this gigantic fundraiser in which George Clooney wasn't really the host. He was the entertainment, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, God bless him. I appreciate when entertainers and movie stars and people of conscience and that are on our side want to do raise money and stuff like that. If you're with the president at any given time, have you been like at a rope line for the president or anything like that? Anyway, what happens is that you go to people come to take pictures, and usually before or after an event, the president will line up. People will come and they'll take a picture with them and they'll say hello. And there's a person that stands next to the president and they say, "Mr. President, George Clooney and Julia Roberts." "Hey, George, Julia, how you doing?" "Mr. President, Andrew Callahan." And And you may have been filming him all day. And
he's defending the fact that, according to George Clooney, when Joe Biden was attending a George Clooney hosted fundraiser, he was introduced to George, and Joe Biden clearly had no idea who he was looking at. He treated George Clooney like he was just another guy. Like, it's like, oh, hi. Like, he didn't seem to immediately recognize who he was. And we all know that Joe Biden is senile. This is no longer like speculation being engaged in behind the scenes. We know for a fact there's a million pieces of evidence that Joe Biden has been mentally not present for a long time. Like, it's been confirmed by all of his staffers, the lengths they went to protect him, the debate performance, over and over and over and over again. So the fact that he's still defending his father, I mean, Jesus.
He may know George for the last 30 years, and he may have met him 15 times. But the guy on his shoulder, who's usually a military officer, has one job, to say the name of the person that's walking up. That's it. And George Clooney is now, to rationalize why he attempted to cut the knees out from a sitting president, the most successful president in the history of his party in his life, in terms of the legislative policies that he wanted to see passed, had to justify somehow him going above and beyond to write an op-ed in the New York Times to try to force the sitting president of the United States out of the race. And so he makes up this story about how the president had to be introduced to him.
Oh, like he didn't recognize George Clooney?
Exactly.
Because of like dementia or something?
Oh, I don't know. Well, that's the implication, right?
Yeah. Like he's forgetting things.
Yeah. And by the way, I remember this story is that George Clooney wasn't going to show up to that fundraiser, and he was bitching to the White House staff and to the people, the senior staff, is that he was so angry that the president would criticize the arrest warrant that was executed for Netanyahu. And the president, when asked, said, would they arrest Netanyahu if he came to the United States? And he said he would not have the authority, nor would he do that. And I guess George Clooney's wife was the principal architect of that arrest, of that warrant for Netanyahu. And I don't judge that in one way or another, was the right thing or not. He was very, very angry that my dad did not, I guess, like, pay homage to her or something.
Pay homage to her? Is by arresting a war criminal, a genocider? You think he's playing that off like an ego move? Oh yeah, his George Clooney's wife was just like selfishly insisting that her preference that the genocidal war criminal Hitler V2 be arrested. Okay, yeah.
And defending your wife or something. But I mean, I saw the text messages that he wrote, reams of text messages, like, how dare he do that? And he kept promising that he was going to embarrass the president and pull out of the fundraiser.
Before we continue about the vultures, I have a George Clooney story. Hopefully we can leave it in. My only really famous Hollywood friend is actor Jack Black, from School of Rock.
I think we get how he feels about George Clooney. There are a lot of clips of him.
For someone, am I going to be like all these Democrats say, you have to talk about and realize that people are really upset about illegal immigration. You. How do you think your hotel room gets cleaned? How do you think you have food on your table? Who do you think washes your dishes? Who do you think does your garden? Who do you think is here by the sheer just grit and will that they figured out a way to get here because they thought that they could give themselves and their family a better chance. And he's somehow convinced all of us that
he's doing the View thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, by the way. I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging the fact that undocumented immigrants do a ton of grunt labor that Americans aren't willing to do. You can advocate for them to be treated better, but like the fact that it would be what you could make more of an argument from the Republican perspective if undocumented immigrants were coming in and taking all of our like esteemed, comfortable, high-paying, socialite jobs or whatever. Like, oh, okay, well then there's a bit more competition in the upper margins. In reality, they're not. Americans like the fact that their grunt labor is being done by an underclass, but at the same time, they don't. They delude themselves. It's the eternal paradox of xenophobia, right? Where you rely on the Chinese to build your railroads, but then you turn around and like, you do yellow peril shit. Nonstop, right? I don't have a problem with that.
But these guys think that we need to run away from all values in order for us to lead. I say, f you. How are we getting those people back from El Salvador? Because I'll tell you what, if I became president in 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 3 years from now, I would pick up the phone and call.
Took a second for him to hone in on the right time there.
President of El Salvador and say, you either send them back or I'm going to invade. It's a crime what they're doing. He's a dictator thug.
Bukele or Trump?
Both.
Yeah. The craziest thing to me is especially interviewing migrants.
Of course, if the U.S. government asked El Salvador to return the people we'd sent them, they would immediately do it. If we asked Bukele to do it quickly and apologetically, he would deliver us like a handwritten apology note. He knows perfectly well what it would look like if his regime ended up on the bad side of American foreign relations. He's not stupid enough to think that he's not Tito, okay? He's not going to weather foreign antagonism. So frustrating. Biden's son is this heated, and Biden was also like that in public, or in private, but he cucked out. Yeah, leaving aside the undying loyalty to his father no matter what, it would be nice to have a little bit more like animated behavior from our politicians.
We sit here and we talk about the one guy because there's a clear legal path to being able to get him back. What about all those other people? Am I not supposed to feel for someone? Am I going to be like all these Democrats say, you have to talk about and realize that people are really upset about illegal immigration. You. How do you think your hotel room gets cleaned? How do you think you got food on your table? Who do you think washes your dishes? Who do you think does your garden? Who do you think is here by the sheer
we saw this bit.
Just great. Understand that these people are really mad, and we got to appeal to these white voters. Ron, the only people that appealed to those white voters was Joe Biden, 81 years old, and he got 81 million votes, and he did not because he appeased their Trumpian sense, but because he challenged it. And he said, you can be an 81-year-old Catholic from Scranton that doesn't understand it, but still has empathy for transgender people and immigrants. And then nobody said, oh.
Well, not too much empathy. Joe Biden generally has been relatively progressive on LGBT issues, but he did, along with the rest of the party, shut up about it after taking office. Well, he didn't shut up, but he definitely started playing it more safe, He definitely did. But it is true that historically Joe Biden has been a relatively progressive force on those issues, which is pretty funny. Historically bad on Israel, of course, but, at least 3. Well, Joe Biden was pressuring Barack Obama to publicly endorse same-sex marriages before Obama came forward with it. Obama supported same-sex marriages years and years before publicly supporting it, but because he's a politician and a coward and a Democrat and a piece of shit, he decided that it was politically inexpedient to publicly advocate for a good moral thing until exactly 51% of the population supported it,
Joe Biden's going to turn us into a socialist state, no matter how much they said it. But these guys think that we need to run away from all values in order for us to lead. I say, you. How are we getting those people back from Salvador? Because I'll tell you what, if I became president in 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 3 years from now.
Okay, that's all the clips thrown together. I wish there were timestamps in the main video.
The one guy, because there's a clear legal path to be smart, Rahm Emanuel, is that we got 100 more times likely to commit themselves and their family a better chance. And he's somehow convinced all of us that these people are the criminals. White men in America are 45 more times likely to commit a violent crime than an immigrant. And the media says, well, you got David Axelrod and, Rahm Emanuel. So smart, Rahm Emanuel. Is that we got to understand that these people are really mad. And we got to appeal to these white voters. Rahm, the only people that appealed to those white voters was Joe Biden, 81 years old, and he got 81 million votes. And he did because
of COVID. And it's not going to happen again. It's unfortunate because if it wasn't for his undying loyalty to his father, he actually might make a good politician. His vulgarity and his checkered past actually could serve to his benefit in the right environment. But unfortunately, he would probably do anything and everything to preserve his father's legacy. Like, he would be very compromised.
Because he appeased their Trumpian sense, but because he challenged it. And he said, you can be an 81-year-old Catholic from Scranton that doesn't understand it, but still has empathy for transgender people and immigrants. And then nobody said, oh, Joe Biden's going to turn us into a socialist state, no matter how much they said it. But these guys think that we need to run away from all values in order for us to lead. I say, you. How are we getting those people back from El Salvador? Because I'll tell you what, if I became president in 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 3 years from now, I would pick up the phone and call the president else.
A deeply interlaced, a tightly connected series of clips. We keep hearing the same one. Oh, the timestamp. Somebody said 126 is when he talks about the laptop. Do I remember that correctly? I am curious what he has to say about it.
That I was facing, which was crack addiction. She literally said, well, that ends now. And it did. I mean, not that minute, but over the next 2 weeks. And then I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. And I said, well, why wouldn't we do it right now? And so he literally called Justice of the Peace to the house.
This doesn't sound right. 126? Am I misremembering the time? What was the time given? 128.
Came and she married us. For me,
your entire iCloud was connected to it. All of your personal text messages, private photos, all that kind of stuff.
Like everybody's laptop.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you left it with a repair shop owner who, for some reason, gave it to Rudy Giuliani. Not exactly sure how that's legal. He distributed it to the press. Particularly, I think the New York Post was involved in the spearheading of this mass dissemination of your private materials. From what it seemed like, it was a lot of private text between you and your friends, family. Your entire sort of private life was on there.
Yeah. And again, so everybody has a laptop. Everybody has a cloud.
I'm assuming not.
No, not everybody has a laptop.
I have a tower, actually. I don't have a laptop. I just have a PC tower myself. No, actually, I did get a laptop once for when I traveled to DC a couple of years ago, or Tennessee, but it's like a really underpowered airbook. It's just for work.
Everybody has a digital life. Almost everybody has a digital life. Everybody has a digital life, pretty much. And that includes voicemails and pictures and text messages and emails and location data and, everything. Everybody, you do, everybody that is here right now. By whatever means, they got my digital footprint going back decades. Over 20 years. Again, I ask anybody, you're steeped in this, and this isn't a challenging question, but it kind of makes my point. What does my laptop prove about criminality or anything other than what I had already readily admitted to, completely transparent about, is my drug addiction?
Well, I'm trying to remember specifically what the most radical conspiracies that I heard. I think that a lot of people are concerned or curious about various international business dealings.
So I served on the board of well over a dozen different entities, way more than that, including...
I don't know how long he waffles on about this, but to be clear, people put Hunter Biden in very high-paying positions on corporate boards because they were hoping to take advantage of his familiar relation to Vice President and later President Joe Biden in a corrupt way. They were looking to use him as a connection, and he was definitely only getting these jobs because of corruption, right? But that doesn't prove that Joe Biden actually did anything. It's not illegal, after all, for corporations to put Hunter Biden on their board, assuming they'll be able to use him to get to Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden never once engages. That's not illegal at all. It's funny, if anything. It's just Hunter Biden taking the bag, knowing his father isn't going to bite, which is exactly what happened. No evidence at all that Joe Biden ever actually engaged in any corrupt behavior.
Major global organizations. I was the vice chairman of the board of the National Passenger Rail Corporation, which is otherwise known as Amtrak. It's the largest passenger rail company in the world, which is more than just a rail company. It's also a real estate company. It's also a commercial real estate company. It's a residential real estate company. And it is probably the largest owners of property in urban metro centers of any organization in the country, and a huge employer and a multi-billion-dollar business. And I was the chairman of the corporate governance committee on that board and vice chairman and elected chairman and then resigned before the Obama administration took. So I told you before, I was the chairman of the board of the UN World Food Program, responsible for...
It's just the idea of this guy with no credentials at all being appointed to these positions in the hope of corrupt dealings is really funny to me. We worked at Blizzard for a decade, yeah.
Question. If that's the truth, then what? Did people become more comfortable with Donald Trump after 34 felony counts January 6th and a civil lawsuit in the E. Jean Carroll case?
I think a huge issue, too, especially in my generation, was like the post-October 7th Israel-Palestine situation. I think there was so many people that felt like that was kind of like the BLM 2.0, with the campus protests and
where are they now, Andrew?
Who
those protesters?
Some of them. Well,
when he said that he's going to turn Gaza into a Trump branded golf course, and he's on track to doing that. He said that he would have the conflict, the war over the day that he took office. More people have died in Gaza between when he was inaugurated.
To be clear, absolutely nothing that has happened since Donald Trump became president in Gaza, I don't think Biden would have stopped any of it. If anything, I think there's a very reasonable possibility that Biden would have enabled more conflict between Iran and Israel because he would be less concerned with the ego and the optics of being the guy who stops the 12-day war.
Today than at any time between October 7th and when my dad left office. And where are they now?
The protesters?
Yeah.
They're still active, but not as active. I think part of that has to do with just the fact that the conflict's been going on for longer. But I'm saying this made a lot of people not even vote.
No, I agree with you.
You know what I mean? Not for Trump or Harris. They're just like, you know what? Because you talk about a media market. Like, I had a lot of friends who were just so buried algorithmically in the Hamas-Israel conflict that they're just like, that's all they're seeing. And so if they're only seeing these, like, and the images are horrible. The videos are like nightmarish. So if you're consuming this all the time.
I'm in that algorithm. I understand what you're saying.
And then, like, you just see this, you're like, all right, well, if this huge issue is not going to change, then why would I even participate? And that's the sort of, they call it the black pilling. It's like the nihilism that's setting in. And I'm glad that you don't have that. And I resist it all the time. And I think that our generation will learn for next election. Because Trump wasn't able to do that many destructive things between 2016 and 2020 and a lot of our lives compared to what's happening now. The situation in LA, there being no taco carts in Los Angeles on the streets, not seeing one multicolored rainbow umbrella in anywhere in LA.
Is that the only mention of Gaza? Obviously, Biden would not have done with ICE what Trump is doing. That's obviously a Republican thing. I do think there's some legitimate criticism to the point that the pro-Palestinian protests were almost entirely directed at Democrats when you could very easily run an anti-Israel line with Republicans. You know, like you could very easily do a what happened to America first, no more money to foreign bombs kind of thing. And you could probably, I don't know how many people you'd convince necessarily, but how many did you convince with the original protests, right? I think the work has to continue. But the idea that Biden would have been meaningfully different with regard to Gaza than Trump is just not supported by evidence, I think.
And there's not one of the regional partners could possibly handle that. Not the Egyptians, not the Jordanians, not the Syrians, not the Lebanese, not the Saudis. There's nobody.
Biden paused the supply of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel, and Trump undid that pause. That makes Trump's already worse. Yeah, but that was already a virtue signal. Israel is capable of killing people indiscriminately with or without those bombs. The 2,000-pound bomb ban was a way of not actually halting Israel's offensive capabilities at all, but like looking like you're trying to scale back on the widespread killing. It didn't stop anything, right? It's a virtue signal either way. Besides, the Israelis' preferred way of killing Gazans right now seems to be like leaving a bag of wheat in the middle of an open field and shooting everyone who runs towards it. So I don't, like, the 2,000-pound bomb ban didn't do anything to change the dynamic here.
Would take that population.
Do you think that's because they're concerned with their trade relationships being threatened, or they just don't want their country to become a hotbed for Israeli bombardment?
Oh, I think that they don't want it to become a hotbed for poverty unrest. I think that they look at the lesson of Lebanon, in which the Palestinian refugees settled in Beirut, and Beirut has never been the same, and Lebanon has never been the same. It's completely collapsed. It collapsed, by the way, because of pressure from the Israelis, because of pressure from regional partners, because of pressure from internally, because of the political pressure, because of the Shia-Sunni split. And then you have this situation in which nobody wants the Palestinians, but everybody wants to protect the Palestinians, but nobody wants to take the Palestinians.
And they don't want to move.
It's their home.
Yeah.
So what do you do? And the same as this. If you're an Israeli and just a citizen, not a part of this government, not a supporter of Netanyahu, you are somebody that is sitting there and you watch what they did on October 7th and you go, how the can I possibly live this way? How can anybody live this way? How can you live this way without eradicating the threat? And that's humanity.
I mean, there you go, right? Like that. This is the reason why there's no substantive difference between Trump and Biden with regard to Gaza, because the framing is, well, for Trump, the framing is whatever he wants it to be, right? He just wants to, you know, have golden statues built to him. But like, if your only perspective on Hamas is, oh my God, they did a terrorism, how bad of them, like you have no broader comment on the the geopolitical mechanisms, the history that led to this dynamic, the open air concentration camp, the fact that Hamas was deliberately created, promoted in large part with the help of Israel, who sort of axed out less radical radical. Like, it's not a matter of whether or not what Hamas did was bad. October 7th was bad, folks. It's not difficult to say. It's that this whole thing, this Rube Goldberg machine was orchestrated in large part because the creation of sort of permanent militant Islamist resistance within the Gaza Strip through deprivation, violence, violation of human rights, etc., sniping children from across a fence, was what Israel wanted to guarantee the international support they would need for a continuous crackdown and eventually a genocide. If your only takeaway from this is Hamas bad, like, that is true, but it's also a laughably... Can you imagine, like, coming away from any other conflict with that attitude? Like, can you imagine if, like, your focus on World War II was exclusively like anti-German Polish partisans in the Western border, or if your analysis of World War I was exclusively, Balkan interregional conflicts or whatever? Like, you very deliberately ignore a broader set of circumstances to focus in on whatever, like, gripe you care about. Yeah, Belgian free shooters or whatever. You can do this with literally any conflict. Don't you exclusively do that with Russia currently? No. Hello, new chatter. Oh, you're the person who said that Trump unpausing the supply of 2,000-pound bombs means that he's worse than Biden on this. I see. So you're admitting that Biden had little sway or influence with Israel in their conduction of genocide in Gaza? No? He could have done way more. Wait, what are you talking about? Where is your mind? I don't even understand what your perspective is. I have to assume it's all a bit, though. Reevaluate your life.
I know that there's no way about talking about this without really offending so many people.
Yeah, it's what I call a can't-win topic.
There is no win in the topic other than...
It's a pretty winnable topic, man. You just have to be, like, anti-genocide. Again, the correct response from Biden would have been, after October 7th, holy shit, that was awful, but we do not support any military incursion into the Gaza Strip. We support, like, an international team of peacekeepers going in. Just something like that. Anything like that. But instead, what happened. Drawing 1,000 red lines and then turning the other way when Israel marched their tanks and soldiers across every single one of them. Remember Rafah? Remember that State Department official basically grinning when he was like, no, we didn't say no military operation in Rafah. We said no major military operation in the heart of Rafah. And then the journalist points out they have like 36 tanks in the city center. And the State Department official was like, yeah, you've heard that. Do we know that? Like, just sickening, continuous, like, we know for a fact now that the State Department was internally constraining information, silencing people who went against the mantra, and like censoring reports to the public. Like, we know that. It's not the idea that they were engaging in good faith is indefensible.
To say this, there's only one way forward, and the only way forward is a two-state solution and a diplomatic solution. Bombing the shit out of whatever remains of Hamas in Gaza and turning it into a golf course, like Donald Trump said, is not going to work, no matter what.
That's also what your father was doing, though. Like, that was all happening under your father. The addition of the golf course is not actually the bad part of that. Joe Biden genocide versus Donald Trump genocide then golf course are the same thing to me. Those are the same outcomes to me. The golf course to me, listen, I don't like golf, but to me these are fundamentally the same thing, okay?
Unless you literally kill every single person that inhabits Gaza right now, you would have a generation upon generation that would justifiably haunt Israel
and haunt the United States.
And haunt the United States and any of the Western allies.
9/11 every weekend.
Yeah, and why people can't understand that. Same goes for Iran. The Iranian people.
I really don't like the framing in an ongoing genocide of being like, well, if we don't handle this correctly, the Gazans are going to ram planes into our towers every weekend. Like, is that really our motivation for preventing a genocide? Is that like the best we can do? It's like saying the European powers have to intervene to stop the Holocaust because otherwise when the Jews get out, they're going to be mad and like collapse your banking system or something. Like, I don't think you're very sincere. It's like that's like the Japanese imperial approach to anti-Semitism, They're like, hold on, Hitler-sama, you're making a powerful enemy.
Persian population that is not a part, which is the vast majority, adherence to the Ayatollah, or a supporter of the dictatorial government that rules Iran right now. They don't support their government. But I tell you what they also don't support. They don't support being bombed to the Stone Ages by the United States and Israel to rid them of the leadership that they have not risen up to rid themselves of. It seems to me that's up to them. And Bibi Netanyahu has been promising us that Iran was on the verge of a nuclear weapon for, what, 22 years now? Longer than that. I think he first wrote it in a book that they were months away from a nuclear weapon in 1996. And then he said it again in 2000, and then he did it in 2004, and then he did it during the Iraq War, and then he did it a few months ago, and then he did it a few weeks ago, and then he dropped bombs. But he's been wrong every time, but he's the boy.
So if Biden had won and this had happened under Biden and Biden had gone along with it, Hunter Biden would right now be defending it. He would say, yeah, listen, okay, just because he's made that claim in the past doesn't mean the claim's not true now. It was backed up by U.S. intelligence. Yeah, you know, maybe those previous claims weren't credible, but we know for a fact this one was now. And I think that, you know, what's ridiculous is with Trump's, like, flippancy, it's possible that Trump wouldn't have gone in with B-2 bombers and dropped those bunker busters on the nuclear program. He'll say anything to defend his goddamn dad.
Who cried wolf, and one day the wolf is going to, you know, the wolf is going to be pushed. They have no other option. If they do have the fissile material to be able to create a crude weapon, which, according to Secretary Moniz, former Secretary of Energy, they have enough uranium to create basically a crude nuclear bomb. They could be transported by rail car or tractor trailer. Now, the ability for them to deliver that payload into Israel would be almost near impossible with the intelligence capacity and capabilities of the United States and Israel, because you would not have safe passage.
Also, something that's really important to understand with regard to nuclear proliferation is that there are almost certainly small nuclear weapons on the black market that got lost in transit between Ukraine and Russia when Ukraine was made to give up their weapons after the fall of the Soviet Union. If Iran really wanted to get their hands on a one-and-done nuke, they could do it. They have enough ties with Russia. There's absolutely some corrupt Russian general, like they're out there, hundreds, possibly thousands of unaccounted for nuclear weapons. How many of them still work? At least one. If they want, listen, if Iran ever used a nuclear weapon on Israel, the next day, Iran would be glass. It would no longer exist. The international consequences, the denunciation, it would be immediate, and it would be overwhelming. There is no chance at all that Iran would survive. So if they're effectively doing a suicide bombing mission, then, you know, Israel for Iran, they could have done it already. The idea then that any amount of fissile material that Iran holds onto is a threat to Israel is ludicrous, because they could already procure that threat. The reason they want to develop these materials themselves is because then they can be used as a deterrent. That's the point. They want it as a deterrent. That's why countries have nukes. Not to use them, but as a deterrent. Because if you used a nuke in the modern world, you would wake up the next morning no longer in a country. We wouldn't exist anymore. That would be it. Think the entire military, political, social, and religious leadership of Iran wants to die tomorrow? No, they're deterrents.
Through Syria now, without Assad. So even if they could do it, their ability to deliver it is almost zero. Does anybody think that Bibi Netanyahu is not doing this to save his own ass so that he doesn't end up in jail? Because he has a favorability rating inside of Israel of about 22%. That the Knesset is completely in disarray. Look, here's a real question I have, and it's got me in trouble, not to relate to anybody but Bibi Netanyahu. If the Mossad had the plans for the October 7th attack a year before it occurred, why were you not prepared? Why did you not have soldiers in the southern part of Israel where the attacks occurred for like up to 7 to 12 hours?
Maybe the same reason they didn't capture Osama after the Kenya bombings.
Maybe, but I don't know the answer to that. But no one has been able to actually ask that question in earnest, because we have still been in the fog of war, because we've maintained the fog of war. I don't know if you've read Tom Friedman. I think it's probably the most prescient thing that's been written about this in at least many months. Tom Friedman wrote a thing, is that the worst thing that's happened to the people, the Jewish people, is the Israeli government. Jewish people.
It's insane that he can say stuff like this but not criticize his own father. I don't know. I feel like that's the only point I'm getting from this. Like, every other political position that he has is secondary to that one. It's strange. It's, you know, it's strange, but it's very human. It's one of the rare times where you look at like you look at behavior like this, which is so objectionable, and you know for a fact that it's not because of some Machiavellian scheme to get elected or whatever. It's just he just really loves his dad, which it's sweet. I wish his dad was a better role model to him. He's basically being a wife guy, but for his dad. I think we can just say he's believes in family loyalty, or he likes his dad. I don't think the close relationship that Joe Biden has with his son is like the most honorable, noble thing about either of them. Now, Joe Biden's always been a Zionist, and he's never been particularly left-wing with regard to, well, no, he's been good on union stuff, and he's been good on LGBT issues. It's mostly law and order stuff he's been bad about, and Zionism, everything about Zionism. Was around to see the state created. So he's a racist union guy, basically. I actually feel like in a lot of ways, well, Joe Biden is undoubtedly personally racist by virtue of being 100,000 years old. But when it comes to policy making, I think that he has this like 1960s dagnabbit, we may be different, but we need to get along kind of attitude to him, which is definitely, it's an interesting contrast, because the kind of racism that people exhibited back 50 years ago and the kind of racism you see from the right today are very, very different, right? Racism used to be, okay, you know how there's a difference between like a guy in his 60s who's definitely kind of a misogynist from the way he talks about his wife and his daughter, but doesn't hate women or anything. He's just, old-fashioned, right? In this, paternalistic, chauvinist kind of way, where he's like, oh yeah, making food, that's the woman's job, and she does a great job. I love my wife. That kind of, it's relatively benign. Like, it might manifest sometimes in more harsh or severe ways, but for the most part, it's different to like Andrew Tate type stuff. I think that exists for race as well, right? You have people who are racist in a kind of, I won't call it benign, but in more of a like, yeah, we're different, but yeah, they got some good music, yeah, whatever. Where it's more of like a passive component of your latent biases than it is the thing you actively think about 24/7. When you compare it to like the Andrew Tate of racism, I guess, would be like modern race science YouTubers, where they think about black cock like 24/7, It's different. It dominates their life a lot more. It's not harmless. What's a good term? Latent, passive. I think that for most of American history, oftentimes racists haven't thought much about race, but nowadays, most racists think all the time about race. A racist might just like live their life in the city, and they see people of a different race and they think like, rah, 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 or they have some biases or whatever. But nowadays, the right-wing racist forefront seems to be like, they'll get Korean barbecue and look at it and they'll be like, this is goy slop. I long for the tradition of our white race food. What the Romans must have eaten. Like they make their whole life about it, because they're actively, consciously thinking about it. It's because it's not latent and it's not passive. It's an active, deliberate effort to make it a part of your personality. Of course, there have always been people like that, to be fair. Is goy a slur? No, goyim just means non-Jewish, but sometimes Nazis use the term to refer to like themselves, but as though they're being spoken of diminutively by Jewish people. Of course, I've never heard the term goyim used by a Jew. It's always Nazis who are, self-defacing, but yeah, performative racism versus casual racism. Isn't it the same as Gentile? Yeah, doesn't Gentile and goyim mean the same thing? I think goyim is the more like rude or punchy way of saying it. I think Gentile is a little more polite. I don't really know.